All right, we're live. Welcome, America. Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody's doing good. If you're listening to Restore the Republic, the voice of the people who's had enough, enough of the corrupt judges, enough of the rogue cops, enough of the lawyers who twist the law and the politicians who trample it. This is a show that dares to ask what happened to the de jure American government and how do we get it back? I'm your host, Sheriff Andrew Ike on unincorporated Richland County, Ohio, and every week we expose the lies and decode the legal traps that empower you to reclaim what's rightfully yours. No fluff, no compromise, just facts. And with me, as always, Sheriff Adam Bonner on unincorporated Summit County, Ohio. How's it going, Adam?
Not too bad. How about you guys?
I'm doing good.
Excellent, brother. There's no place like home, man.
Yeah, we got two guests today. Hudson Roberts, he's been on here before. He's unincorporated Idaho co-director. How's it going, Hudson?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on again, Sheriff.
Hey,
I appreciate
no problem.
it. I'm excited.
No problem. Hey, and we got the principal owner of the ASG company, Bobby Chirillo. They call him Bobby C. How's it going, Bobby?
Hello, everybody. Excellent. Good to be with you guys again. Miss you.
What's up, Bobby?
Looking good.
Always trouble.
Well, hey, everybody. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about the American sheriff. You know, us, what's going on in between the corporate law enforcement agency and our public peacekeepers or guardians, as you'd like, as the de facto wants to hear it. We are the guardians of the county. Well, anyways, we're going to do a little roundtable discussion, ask some questions, and see what everybody thinks. So we're going to start off with the act of public peacekeeping officials. We discuss public peacekeeping from law enforcement. We distinguish them. Law enforcement is corporate and public peacekeeping is public, just like it says. The unincorporated sheriff operates in the land and soil jurisdiction and are responsible for keeping the peace rather than enforcing corporate statutes. I think most of the people comprehend that. They're out here. You see it all over social media. The people are tired of these corporate statutes that, are not law. So we'll start off with a question. I'm going to shoot this one to you, Adam. If the sheriff is the highest peacekeeping authority on the land, what happens when he refuses to enforce corporate statutes that violate the rights of the people?
Well, that's a totally different jurisdiction over there. If the corporate sheriff wants to get away from, the collaborative agreements and stuff like that, they have the right to do so. That's, their terminology calling herself being a constitutional sheriff. But as far as peacekeepers go or county guardians, it's a totally different thing. We're not enforcing those type of statutes, acts, codes, regulations, ordinances, that type of stuff. The only time it would pertain cross-jurisdictionally is in like a murder case where there's destruction of property or harm caused to others. So,
yeah. Anybody else want to jump in?
No victim, no crime, so to speak.
Good. Hudson, you want to go, bud?
Yeah. Are you for the next question, or you're saying in response to this as well?
In response, Hudson.
Okay. Yeah. So it's so interesting. People don't always differentiate between the two different roles that a corporate sheriff, county sheriff can play versus an actual peacekeeping official, like you mentioned. It's really important to recognize that anything that is corporate is by definition a corporation, which means it's built for profit. So that corporation is going to try to make profit. And that's where you see a lot of trespass with these different, what we call de facto LEOs, law enforcement officers, who are going around just trying to pull people over for any like slight code that they can see someone break and then try to charge them for it. It's no different than, back in the day, you'd be traveling down an old dirt path with your wagon, and someone would stop you and extort you and try to get your money. Inland piracy, if you will. It's essentially the same thing, because these corporations aren't they're not actually public services, and these LEOs, they're not actually elected officials. And so it's important to recognize the difference between the role, because when you recognize the difference between the role, you recognize what their incentive is. And if they're incentivized for profit, they're going to try to make profit. they're incentivized to keep the peace, they're going to keep the peace.
Hey, good analogy, man.
Yeah, that
Bobby,
sounds
you got
about
it?
right. Yeah, I do. I mean, coming from that world, you don't just become sheriff. You're not an elected official like like Hudson was saying, because there's no live person living in that jurisdiction. Everything's a dead entity. It's land of the dead. So the only time you can be elected, right, by electors, which comes from your assemblies, right?
Yeah.
Those are your elected officials, and that's why I had to swear an oath to two constitutions, and never told why. Asked questions, got gaffed off. I had to swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States and to the United States Constitution as both a Leo and a peace officer. That's how they get you. All right, they can make it legal, but use it unlawfully as long as you have that peace officer designation. Okay, so technically, anybody who swore that oath can just turn around Mac and print and be like, "Well, here we go." But then that's it's career suicide for that poor soul. So I'll yield with that. But good job, Hudson. That's excellent.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
One of the things that helps people understand a lot is the history behind how these LEOs started functioning commercially. And they actually function under what's called Pinkerton laws. So basically, back in the day, you had public laws that made it so peacekeeping officials were the authority that could walk around and actually enforce the law. But then you had a situation specifically with the railroad. As the expansion of the railroad happened, you had more and more robbers and thieves trying to hold up a train and steal from it. Well, we know railroads are corporations, they're incorporated entities. And so there was a law passed that allowed, it's called Pinkerton laws, that allowed for corporations to hire private security personnel to protect their goods. And the interesting thing about that is it sets them apart as a security officer from someone that's actually elected and working for the public good of the people, because now you have armed officers working for the good and interest of a corporation. And when you have that, unless it's extremely well kept under control, it leads to a lot of corporation, because then you literally have corporations that are allowed under Pinkerton laws to hire their own private thugs, essentially.
Yeah.
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 And also,
I think about it, what gets me is how these Leos, they're men just like us. They might put on a uniform and change themselves into a law enforcement officer. But it's like, how can you not grasp that these are corporation bylaws, these statutes, codes, ordinances? They're for the corporation. They're not for the people outside of the corporation. So that's the one thing that always gets me, and I try to explain this to them, but it's just right over their head. I don't know if it's indoctrination or they're just drilled so much that.
Well, they're trained. I don't want to jump on you.
No, go ahead.
They're trained that everybody's going to kill them. Okay, so what they did, not they, meaning the people who come up with these things, who have absolutely never worked a street job in their life. They don't teach about it, right? They teach very limited UCC, just enough to put on a ticket, okay? But even with UCC, if you look at the UCC, there's something UCC 1-308. There's a whole bunch of things that actually give us our freedoms if we exempt ourselves from that, okay? That's not taught. No constitutional law is taught. It's basically, it's the way I was taught. And you got to remember, I was in some place at some time. Yeah. We were taught how to get out of things without knowing the reason why we were trying to get out of things. All right. There were obvious things that didn't make sense. How I ended up here is I told the commander, you want me to go do what? I said, I didn't sign up. Did you go fuck yourself? Okay. I got shot about 3 months later. So you guys figured that out, right? So, I took them to task. They didn't know what to do with me because, I was a go-getter. I made a lot of arrests, but I arrested a lot of bad people. I enjoyed fighting, and I never did anything across the line. I always gave somebody a chance, and once the handcuffs are on, it's gone. But, I experienced the last part of old school policing. Like if you look at, just look at, any Baltimore police show. That's how I was trained. Okay. I was part of the whole GTT, the gun trace task force thing. You name it. I've seen the worst of the worst. So now when I see this going on now, in fact, I don't know if you guys could run this. I may not have time for it, but there's a car stop video of me getting pulled over. It's a pretty good video to watch because, you know, I just boxed this guy into a trap. But they to answer your question, they're not taught this, okay? And if you ask about the Constitution, I was told more than one time that the Constitution doesn't live here. You're an indentured servant. Move on and do your job. Okay. You know, so the reason why these guys, well, let me put it this way. Everybody knows there's something fucked up in that place, all right? Law enforcement, it's dead. I'm sorry to say, it's dead. You can't reform something that's from the inside that's dying, okay? You have to transform something, right, to something new, right? If you keep reforming the same bullshit over and over, you're just going to get bigger bullshit and bullshit. So if you actually transform, and you know, all the leaders in law enforcement, they're very smart people. They're great stand-up people. They were never taught this, you know, and it's very frustrating for me to, you know, see guys I bled with doing certain things, and I'm just like, they don't know. They just have no idea. They can't see it. They just can't see it. And if they do see it, you know, you end up like me. Nobody wants to end up like me. At the time, I didn't have kids. Like, I didn't even expect to live till I was 35. So, I mean, I was a maniac out there. But I had to eat a lot of stuff. And there comes a point where, you know, you have to be able to look yourself in the face in the morning, you know? So once I heard that, and then, you know, I got set up and shot, and a whole bunch of things will happen with me. And I knew I was onto something, you know? So they detailed me to the courts real quick. And I asked, I'm like, you know, I was in the courts for maybe about 3 months. And I mean, I was flat out asked, why are the courts banks? Gone next day. I was gone. Addict, gone. Yep. So I'll deal with that.
Hey, I got a question for you, Bobby.
They don't know. Go ahead, Bubba.
Just to elaborate a little bit, earlier you kind of made a brief comment where you said that LEOs are basically trained to assume everybody's going to hurt them. And Absolutely. I just want to elaborate real quick, and I'm curious what your experience has been. Obviously, I was never trained as an LEO, but like, we all fly the civilian peacetime flag. And at least on Idaho, we actually fly these flags on our private automobiles when we travel. We have them on our automobiles. So it's pretty clear what jurisdiction we're operating under. But one of the things that people don't realize is LEOs and other corporate officials are taught to assume that they are in a wartime jurisdiction or a wartime state.
Absolutely.
Which means they're assuming everyone they interact with is a combatant. But we learn, if you've been reading Anna's articles and other things, you learn that we are, as Americans, actually non-combatants. We are actually in peacetime, which is why we're currently flying the peacetime flag. And so when LEOs and other corporate officers come across us, even if they themselves may be military by definition, they need to recognize the civilian law of peace that is owed to everyone recognized as a civilian non-combatant. But can you elaborate just a little bit more on your training you got that was designed to make you assume that everybody was there to hurt you, or that everyone was a combatant?
Sure, and it's a double-sided thing. There's a legit officer safety issue about that. Like, when you're out peacekeeping and doing the same thing, you're going to have the same issues, you know. But you're approaching it in a different way because you're not going after somebody for a seatbelt, or you're not going after somebody because I got pulled over for a tag, just American national tag, just, you know, the same tags that you guys are flying. They don't know, and when they see that flag, we're automatically associated with the propaganda of being lumped into domestic terrorists and, you know, sovereign citizen shit. Because, you know, what these people tend to do, there's something called red team, and there's certain things that happen for a reason. It's almost like an act. Like, if you were to go back, even just in the COVID crap that just went on, right? You would see a guy, if I want to say he's from Minneapolis, I can't remember exactly what state he's from, but he's a cop. He's marking up houses. He's delivering bricks. Like it's some of it is just like false flag stuff. So like, they would go to the extent, and now I'm not saying any specific department did this, but I know for a fact that, you know, when you have 3 people get out of a car, one of them's a victim, one of them's a witness, and the other one's a police officer. I mean, is that not planned?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they actually go through, because you got to remember, this is an act, okay? They cannot live law. They have to practice law. That's why it's the appearance of justice, right?
Yeah.
Just us, you know, what is just us? Just us know this is a scam, and, you know, if you don't say anything, and you're going to be fine. Like, that's justice to them, okay? I'm going to offend a lot of people by saying that, but I'm sorry, guys. It's the truth. You got to follow the law. You know, follow the case law, follow the general assessor's law, all the way from the Norman Conquest to now. You can't deny that. You cannot deny that. So, I mean,
Because we know they do things in the eyes of injustice, but they like to say that they do things in the eyes of
but you got to remember
justice.
something
I have
too.
yet to see justice.
Yeah, you have to remember something too. Everything in this thing is duality. Okay, so there's Fairbanks Police Department, and there's a police department of Fairbanks. Okay, so there is actually good people that do the right thing, except in this world, it seems like the more you mess up, the higher you get.
Yeah, I've seen
So
it.
I hope that helps out. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to bust on these guys because they just don't know, and it's a different system, and it's failing. The system's failing. There's no other way but for them to, I wouldn't say come at us because we're superior, original superior concurrent general jurisdiction. It's true, but the thing is, they need to start practicing law as opposed to living legal. That's all it is.
I agree. Well, hey, let's go on to the next one. But Hudson did bring up a great point, about it's just sad that these three-letter agencies are kind of running roughshod against us. You know what I mean?
Well, because
damn
no one
flag,
stands up.
We made a peace proclamation, and here we got three-letter agencies in these foreign jurisdictions saying that we're combatants. It just doesn't make sense. Well, anyways, go ahead, Bobby.
No, I was going to say that, I came up with this way to go after prosecutorial misconduct with FARA violations and all this stuff. We could bring it under FARA. I'm not going to tell you how right on the air, but it's possible for us to get it under FARA, which is Foreign Agent Registration Act.
Yeah, we brought that up before. All right, here's the next question. Hudson, this one's going to go to you to start off with. If an unincorporated sheriff has the lawful authority to arrest corporate officers who harm the people, what does that mean for agencies we assume are untouchable?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that I've been shocked about, and it's been a little bit more shocking to me. I was educated in the home by my parents. I was never sent to the corporate schools. And so I was able to I guess, learn how to self-educate and self-govern a little bit more than most, and it was very fortunate. So I was able to recognize a little bit more about the incorporated structure and the incorporated mindset that a lot of people have. But one of the things I've realized about the entire generation is most people have been brainwashed into thinking that the law applies only to civilians and not to government officials. And what they think of as government officials is anybody that has any vest of authority, whether that be, the court clerk, or even just the secretary that's there at the door, or a law enforcement officer, any security personnel whatsoever. People just assume they have to do exactly as they're told. And what they don't realize is that the public law is designed to protect the people and their assets from criminals and from anybody that would seek to harm the people and harm their assets. And so it's important to recognize that these LEOs and everything are themselves subject to the public law. People assume that the public law is just what they think of as the government says. What they don't realize is what is this government that they're thinking of as this big, like, just imaginary, omnipotent, omnipresent thing that's supposedly controlling everything. And they don't realize that doesn't actually exist. It's only in their imagination. There is literally thousands of different corporate entities, different agencies that don't communicate to each other, that all together make up a situation of corporate feudalism that allows corporations to just prey upon the ignorant people that don't know how to defend their American rights. Yeah. So we grow up being super patriotic. We're taught to be, we're blowing up fireworks on the 4th of July, and we're taught to love our forefathers and our history. But then they curb that love and patriotism back to a support of these corporations, and whatever they says goes. And so what they end up doing is they basically just run amok, breaking all these laws, because the people don't realize that we can actually enforce the public law against them. It's actually a huge oxymoron where, and I've experienced this a lot. I'm sure many of you have, those of you that have corrected your status and are now recognized as American state nationals. A lot of people try to mix the idea of what we're doing with the, like you said earlier, Bobby, the sovereign citizen movement and all that stuff. And mostly they try to make it look like we're criminals trying to break the law, not recognizing that we literally are here to uphold the public law. We're here to make sure that that public law not just applies to ourselves, but also our public employees, those that are LEOs, those that are in, elected positions or private positions in general. There is no office in the United States of America, unincorporated, or even in the United States, that makes it so that the public law doesn't apply to you. In other words, there is no office that makes the law not applicable to you. The law is applicable to you regardless of what position you hold. And just because you might be in a temporary situation where nobody's got the whip or no one's got the hammer and you might get away with it, doesn't make what you did any less illegal. And the corporate veil doesn't take away the individual accountability of what you actually did. And that's one of the things that we have to learn. And so back to your original question, and I'm sorry for the long-winded answer.
Yeah.
What the unincorporated county sheriffs can do if each state assembly gets set up and establishes their court processes is we can actually prosecute criminals, including LEOs, agents that are functioning under Pinkerton laws, anybody that breaks the public law and harms somebody and creates an injured party in any way. And that's the beautiful part about what we're doing here on the American States Assemblies is we're literally setting up the assemblies so that people on their counties can apprehend and prosecute actual criminals. And we don't have to sit around here just like hoping that this imaginary omnipotent government doesn't harm us anymore.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So,
we've talked about that. We've talked about that immunity before, and how they think they have some kind of immunity, which they don't. Go ahead, Bobby.
No, I was going to say that boils down to I call the vacancy doctrine. They have to fill the position. It's a gap, but unless like Hudson said, you stand up the right way. So where's the sheriff's power come from? Right? Think about it. What's the source of authority, sheriff? The source of the sheriff's authority, right? It's the elected. It's the county. It's the county general assemblies. The county assembly members. They're bonded and sworn, and they lawfully investigate. They have ceremonies and affirmations and declarations, just like how the marshals just got stood up, correct?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, the sheriffs are just marshals, marshals are the sheriffs of international jurisdiction. Right. Sheriffs, it's the same thing. You just claim it. You got to claim it. If you don't claim it, the problem, and not that it's so much it's a problem, but you could, by that definition, since they're peace officers, and law enforcement officers, you could actually hold them to that peace officing title, right? And have them basically, you basically deputize them, to go do lawful things. And I just said something right there. To make this very simple, very, very simple. The creation cannot rule the creator, right? If it has a title, it has no jurisdiction over a living man or woman. That's it.
Right.
Bingo.
Can I say just a couple other things?
Please.
Bobby made me think of these. So number one, just to kind of back up what you said, I noticed Chad Morgan, he's been on your channel before, made a comment, and he said that the police officers can't rise in the ranks unless they enforce corporate codes and statutes. That's an interesting comment, but it's totally true. What we don't realize is the only excuse for those public employees to exist in that corporate structure is that they're supposedly providing a form of governmental services for the people to protect the people and their assets. That's the only reason they exist. So they have to be able to function as a peacekeeping officer, which is what they're technically able to do. But unfortunately, the corporate system is set up so that once they are in that position, once, like you said, Bobby, I've had other friends that have told me about it who have gone through the LEO training. You get to a point where you're there believing you're supposed to enforce the public law, but like your supervisor's kind of winking at you and saying like, really just go get those tickets and generate revenue for the company.
I mean, and Justice Scalia says the same exact thing. You're allowed to do it, but good luck after you do it.
Exactly. And so it creates a situation where people are rewarded for actually trespassing against private people instead of actually enforcing the public law. So that was one thing. But then another thing I wanted to point out was the word de facto. And we use it all the time. People that are new to these concepts don't necessarily understand what we're saying. But just in brief, de facto and de jure are antonyms, right? De jure means the actual authoritative or the organically existing. De facto basically means the default or the thing that's there in absence of the de jure. So for instance, if you have a stepdad, you could say he is your de jure father because your real father is not there. And that illustrates what we're talking about when we're talking about de facto. Because like you said, Bobby, the actual authoritative people haven't set up their assemblies and their courts. The corporate people, the corporate entities are there as a default because we're not here claiming the authority. We're not here setting up the courts and we're not here enforcing the public law. And if we're not here doing it, no one else is going to. And so it's really important for Americans not only to understand their rights, but understand that if they want their rights protected, they kind of have to do something about it.
Exactly. I think Hudson said something earlier about, Adam, what do you think, the way social media and TV and the way kids are getting information nowadays, even us adults, it's easy to see how this circus in Washington, D.C., no one's being held accountable for anything. And they see it. The people are starting to see it, what has been going on this whole time. It's just coming to the surface.
It is.
I think kids get to an age where they learn how to manipulate that, just like in separated homes, they might go to one parent's house, for a couple of days, they get into an argument and they start complaining to the other parent, come get me. I need to be there. They're hurting me or whatever. And so, manipulation is going to occur when they see no accountability. When there's no accountability and rules and structure in the home, the same thing applies to, shared parenting agreements. I've seen it happen for years, but, at the end of the day, these people are in vacated positions. They're not properly oath or bonded. And that's kind of what Bobby was talking about, how can a creation, perceive that they have this authority, and then do mandates and, hold you to their legal processes when none of the stuff's being done lawfully. Legal and lawful are two different terms. So
Yeah, they don't know that. I wish they knew that.
I know that's what we got to get out. I think it's more people should see it though. Well, anyways, here we go. We're going to go with protect the rights and the property of the people. Basically, what the sheriff's doing. The public sheriffs are obligated to protect living people and their property, not corporate persons. So the question is to Bobby: if a sheriff's first duty is to protect the people's rights and property, what happens when those rights are threatened not by criminals, but by government itself?
Well, that's kind of the whole principle of Mac and Prince. I think it was a Brady bill, Brady checks, wasn't it? Background checks started that whole thing. So
Brady v. Maryland.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it was.
What was it called? The Brady bill? The Brady bill?
Yeah, it was the Brady bill. It was the background checks for. I want to say it was firearm background checks. It's
like a Brady violation type deal.
It is that has a lot to do with it. So, all right, give me that one more time because I just got sidetracked. I just was on something and I lost it.
It is, if a sheriff has his first duty is to protect the people's rights and property, what happens when those rights are threatened not by criminals but by government itself?
Well, you're talking. That's again. You got to pick what jurisdiction that is. If you're talking to an unincorporated land and soil sheriff, well, then that's his thing at all. Law enforcement. They say they have property and people, but that's their first thing they protect is the company. That's just how it is. Unfortunately that's how it is, and good officers get named for life for doing the right thing. It came to a point where I literally, just by textbook, could have shot somebody maybe twice a day. All right, I'm coming from a 68. Maybe I'm coming from Baltimore. Okay. I mean, murder rate was well over 350 when I was working there. I was brought on the Clinton administration with all the grant funding, So, I mean, I'm not talking bad about Baltimore. I love my time there, but I saw a lot of nasty stuff. More so, I don't know, I'm good. I'm not going to say anything about that. To answer your question, they don't have a responsibility for your property. They don't have a responsibility for your life. It's their life and their property is what that means. And it's the truth. I'm sorry.
Adam
Yeah.
Hudson, in response?
I could say something briefly, but it's some of kind of what we already touched on. Basically, the only premise that our hired hands, our employees, our public employees are there, the only reason they're there is to protect the people and their assets. And if they stop protecting the people and their assets, they've lost all excuse to exist. Because again, these are legal fictions. I kind of want to throw something out there. This is interesting. Our forefathers, so fascinating to study who they were and the things they wrote. The first and second journals of the Continental Congress, or the journals of the first and second Continental Congress, super educational to read. But you start to realize that American law was literally set up on the premise of natural law. Now, one of the things that you guys said twice already, and I'm going to elaborate for the audience a little bit. It makes sense to those of us that have been studying it a lot, but maybe not to everybody, but that a creation cannot rule over its creator. Right? That sounds like it sounds like one of those sentences that people hear, and it sounds almost like inspiring, but like really, what does it mean to some people might not quite understand.
Man-made legislation as the creation.
Exactly. But one of the things I want to point out is, like I said, our founding fathers built America on natural law. And naturally speaking, I mean, even if you just go into like the first law of thermodynamics, you're talking about the laws of energy, right? Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Number one, that's the first principle. A system cannot give more energy than itself contains, okay? Which means anything that is created naturally has less energy than the thing that created it, which means it is fundamentally on a physics level less than the creator, okay? Yeah. It's really important to recognize that. And again, American law is based on natural law. So when you understand that natural law, you understand that these legal fictions, these pieces of paper that we designed to serve us and to protect the people and protect their assets, that then give people an excuse to damage us, destroys completely the purpose of these corporations and their only reason to exist.
Yeah, damn, good way to look at it. Hope everybody's getting something here. Adam, you got anything on that?
No, I think some people in the comments have us confused with the other guys, and they're just making assumptions again. But I'm not going to moderate them today. I'll just let them be.
Here's the deal. Look, this is not something we're making up. Go look in the history books. Go look at, for example, start at like maybe, I don't know, Norman Conquest. What's that? 1060 something. Okay. Start there. Go to the Magna Carta. All right. So what's the Magna Carta? What does that do?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Seriously. What's a papal bull? What's the unum sanctum? What's the Romanus Pontifex? These things are all ecclesiastical law. And, this is going on for centuries now, So a good one is the Sestakay Act, right? That's you know what year the Sestakay Act came out?
1666.
Adam, you are right on the money, brother. Yep. And what came out after that? Maritime Wagering Act. Okay, that's when the British Crown and the Dutch East India Company, they colluded to screw us, right? They treat living men as vessels. That's where it comes from. 1702, they've been doing this.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I looked a little bit more into that as far as like how that all came to be, and it just basically came to a bunch of broke people trying to become somebody with the name and power, and they went to the right people, got funded, and then those acts were created, and it just trickled on across the pond over to here.
Yeah. So that's been going on until, I want to say the motu proprio when Anna had all that Vatican stuff going on, okay? When the Vatican got labeled as, and the Catholics are going to love me for this, the Vatican got labeled as a terrorist organization. I'm not saying this because I'm a Catholic. I grew up Catholic. Well, I grew up Catholic. I'm not Catholic now, but that's where it all started. So once the Pope, issued that motu proprio, what does that deal with? Okay, so how does that apply to all these judges? Oh, this isn't U.S. law. This isn't American law, but it is, because if you follow the UCC, who owns the UCC? It's trademarked to not Uniden. It's trademarked to, I can't remember. I'm having a brain fart right now. But whatever it is, it's owned by the Vatican. Okay, and it's registered right down the street in the Holy See. Okay, so that's foreign law. Right there. Right there is enough for FARA. Okay, it's not just enough for FARA, but it's enough to get them extradited under the immigration laws as well.
Okay.
I'll yield with that. Yeah.
All right. Next question. This kind of runs in with what we were just talking about, but see, Adam, if the people are true source of authority, does a sheriff have a responsibility to defend them even when the courts and agencies or corporations claim otherwise?
Oh man, I've been waiting for this.
Yeah, Adam, have him at it.
So it would be the sheriff's job or the county guardian's job, like on the unincorporated side, to stand with the people, to put anything that's being brought forth against the people that put them in their office, to put that stuff through the proper scrutiny, to see if any rights violations, whatever it might be, are in the mix, if they're getting violated any type of way. And if there is anything that they find, they have a right to kick it back and say, anything pertaining to this man or woman, from here on, you send those notices to me to send whatever those summons or services to the proper authority on the county, which would be a county guardian. And then you would be able to take it from that point and say, okay, you served it to the proper authority on the county, and then you would reject it because you see they're just trying to profit, doing the little security stuff and all that nonsense that they do. But it is the job of the county guardian to stand with the people and to protect their rights, their property, and their liberty, hands down.
Yeah.
Honestly, and that's see, these guys, the people running the show, law enforcement, they understand that, and they're having big pushes to actually get to that point. You got to understand that these aren't bad people. I mean, I've seen some really bad apples, but the majority of them are really good people. They just don't know, and they're made to work 40-hour work weeks and double time and overtime, so they never get a chance to sit down and read unless you get in trouble and they're wise ass like me, right? Then you have the time to read, right? So never give me free time, people. Put me in a cell and just make me like don't do that. Oh man, I would love to have that free time. Jeez. So I don't want to yap over here. I could just go on and on.
Hudson, you got anything?
I have a couple thoughts, but some of it is what we've already touched on. I'm glad Bobby kind of touched on how like these are good people we're talking about, people that are just misled essentially. We have this interesting situation where most people that are American state nationals, like we correct our status because we're concerned about the actual safety of the people. And when we say people, a lot of people are confused as to like what that even means. Like, who are we talking about? What are we talking about? I noticed you have a commenter who said something to the effect of that American national is a UCC made term, and that it's synonymous with U.S. citizen. And so I just kind of want to touch on that real quick because I think it'll loop back. But people don't realize the American government is set up under with the English language. And they don't realize that when you're talking about legality and legalese, as people call it, you're talking about these law dictionaries like Black's Law Dictionary and everything like that. It's actually utilizing different terms that don't actually apply in English. And so when we talk about American state nationals, we're not using it as a title. It's not a title. It is nothing other than the English definition of those words. If you were born on American soil within the physical boundaries of an American state, like Idaho in my case, or like New Jersey, or like wherever it is, you are nationally of that state. So like I'm Idahoan, right? And Idaho is an American state. So to say I'm an American state national is saying nothing other than the English definition of those words. And people don't realize that when you're studying a lot of UCC or when you grow up in what I call the incorporated mindset. Yeah, exactly. Like when you grow up with the incorporated mindset, you're taught to think of everything in terms of like title or authority or patent. And so we end up having like this weird, like we're basically missing the truth that's like right in front of our eyes. We're seeing American state national. We're thinking, what is that title? What is that thing? Instead of thinking, oh, what is the English definition of these words? And when you recognize that, then it's so much easier to recognize who's who and what's what. It's easier to recognize that, oh,
You know what's
people that
funny, Hudson? I just had a thought. Sorry to cut you off, but
go for it.
this is not in their law books. This is not in a lot of recent case law. This is in styles manuals where you learn about
Correct.
nationality. So why do you think it's in a styles manual? Right?
Chicago
So like
specifically.
Chicago Styles Manual, Volume 6 and Volume 8 talk about this. So I just wanted to point that out. Go ahead.
No, Hudson, I wanted to say that I'm glad you brought that up because, I've been seeing a lot of people, especially on social medias, and they talk about this subject a lot. They'll be like, well, you don't see a American national or state national in the Declaration or in the Constitutions. They're taking it too literal.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they just are comprehending what we're trying
Well,
to.
this is sorry to jump on that. Sometimes I think they're not taking it literal enough, because when you think about it, when someone writes a document that says "we the people," you have to ask yourself, who is we the people, right? Who is the party? Because if you recognize these documents as being literal contracts between we the people and a service provider, you have to ask yourself who's party to the contract. And so I always ask my friends, I'm like, I always ask them, like, wait, well, who's the people? Is it like Samoans? Is it Guatemalans? Like who is it? And it's pretty obvious to people. There's like, no, well, we're talking about Americans. It's like, okay, well, how is American defined? Do you know the history? Do you know what defines America or an American? I wrote on the Living Man podcast, my channel, I have a whole thing that goes over what an actual American is. But basically the short of it is, people that are born on the soil of an American state within its physical borders naturally inherit American state nationality. That's exactly what that is. And so I kind of lost my train of thought there, but the main point is, people need to understand who we the people are in order to understand who's party to the contract. And if you're not reading these documents as actual contracts, then you're going to get really confused and you're not going to know what's going on.
Exactly.
So can I just explain? Can I just come down on that? Something that Anna has said a bunch of times, right? So you're absolutely right. There's no specific American national in federal law. It doesn't exist. But where does it come from? It derives from pre-Civil War states of the Union. Okay, so pre-Civil War states of the Union, right, that are still present. States of the Union and Union states, right? The term American state national, okay. That refers to our native political status at the level represented by, New Jersey, just, your nationality, basically. You're California, New York, or I'm a New Jerseyan, right? So that's what we're talking about. And the fact that the federal citizens are ignorant because, one, there's no surprise, but they weren't taught this. You can't hold them responsible for that because they got this shit shoved down their face. The way they come off at you, yes. 100% they should be able to read the U.S. Constitution and say this doesn't apply, but that's not where they are. They're too worried about, grandma having a freaking sword off under her jacket.
True history does not exist within United States code. I mean, that's where they put, corporatized, person, U.S. citizen.
Yeah. So, and they did it on purpose to cause confusion, right? So the core issue is, it's exposed by the first United States Immigration Naturalization Law. First of all, it'll go right there. And that describes like the process American-born people, right, must undergo to become United States citizens. And what United States citizens are we talking about? Capital U, capital S, capital C, our American United States citizens of the Confederation of, understand, that held the Republic. Those are United States citizens that don't exist anymore, right? So that's where they get the trap, So similarly, U.S. citizens, the British Tories, I'm sorry, but you guys are Tories. They're spelled different, okay? Citizens of the United States are municipal. U.S.
Come on.
Bobby cut out a little bit.
Yeah.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Just to go off of some of what he was saying. It's interesting. I say this to my friends a lot too. I'm always saying this. I'm always saying, in law, in general, internationally, nationally, pretty much anywhere you go, a contract is only enforceable within the language it is written. That sounds kind of obvious, but it's important when you recognize that certain words, and you can get yourself a laugh if you just look this up online, look up words that English words that mean something totally different in another language. Look that up and you'll have like a whole list of them. Like the word gift in Danish means poison, whereas like brat in Russian means brother. And it's like, obviously it's a no-brainer. A contract is only enforceable within the language that it is written. So when you realize what the English definition of the words are as written in the constitutions, and you go back to the English definition of those words from the dictionary of that time, things start to get really clear. When you study like the Justinian deception, or you go into the Chicago Manual of Styles, things become really clear what language we're talking about and what words mean in actual American common law. But when you study things like the Black's Dictionary of Law instead of the Bouvier's Dictionary of Law, you start to realize that there's this big difference between definitions using English characters, especially when you start to get into like the all caps letters versus the lowercase.
Exactly.
But it's really important to recognize that when you're talking about contract law, of which everything that is set up in the United States, including the Declaration of Independence and the constitutions, it's functional for that. You recognize that the language it's written in is extremely important.
Yeah, you're right, Hudson. You know, I just watched a few videos, you know, and I've known this, but there's a lot of people out here in the audience that, or U.S. citizens that are watching that, you know, don't distinguish between the capital S on a state or the lower case S on a state. You know, they mean two different things. Same way with citizen. There's a capital C on one, a smaller C on the other. Different things.
Right.
You know, and a lot of people get confused by that. So it's hard to talk to people when they don't comprehend or don't think about that stuff, you know?
Yeah, you got union states and states of the union. You got national soil jurisdiction, and then you got like a totally different thing going on over on the other side. Whether it's necessary in what we're doing or not, we can do without it. I mean, we can move forward with just the Federation of States. But you know, we're finding all these things as we go, and we're working on that stuff. So,
All right. Well, hey, Bobby's coming
Hudson's
back.
on point tonight,
Bobby's
huh?
coming back. You're there, buddy.
There you go.
All right. Right in time. Adam, or no, this one's for Hudson. We're going to talk about ensure due process in the soil jurisdiction. You know, what the sheriffs need to do. Sheriffs are described as guardians of due process for the people, ensuring lawful, not corporate procedures are followed. Here's the question, Hudson. If the sheriff is the last line of defense for due process on the land, what happens when the courts agencies bypass him or impose corporate procedures on the people instead?
Well, what happens, pretty much exactly what has happened to America, where you have a lot of corporate feudalism and everybody's thinking that they're committing a felony a day because you can't walk outside and spit in the wrong direction without getting in trouble. And so people don't realize, if you don't create, this is basically American common law, and obviously this is a pretty simple way to say it, but if there's no injured party, there is no crime. And it's pretty simple. If you haven't harmed anyone, there is no crime. A victimless crime doesn't actually exist. If there's a victim, it's a crime. If there's no victim, it's not a crime. And so when you have a situation where the peacekeeping official is bypassed by a corporate entity, and the corporate entity is allowed to get away with it, you have corporate entities harming people, and those people having no recourse. You know, we know this in the First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law prohibiting an establishment of religion, the freedom of the press, the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. People have the authority to gather and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And unfortunately, due to the atrocities of the so-called Civil War, the people lost their forum to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And so currently we have that situation where there's so many corporate agencies and, you know, corporate entities trespassing against the living people because the venue to assemble and to petition the government has gone away for so long. Fortunately, with everything Audubon Rights has done in 2019, the states were called to assemble again, and they're currently set up. But this is a matter of, okay, well, we're here and we're standing. Now we actually need to start getting the training out and the process and procedures to start getting these corporations back in their commercial lane instead of trespassing against living people.
Yeah. Now,
Does that
Hudson,
answer
you
your
brought up
question?
yes, but you brought up something that's really important. You know, in the C jurisdiction where all these dead entities are at, the U.S. citizens, the straw men, these people go into their town hall meetings. They go, we see it on videos all the time, getting kicked out for rude language, getting a couple minutes to speak. They don't have an option to redress their government. They really don't have it. So now on our side, on the land and soil jurisdiction, we have to remember as assemblies, as state assemblies, that fact. The people have the right to speak in these assembly meetings. The people have the right to bring their grievances,
Right.
and it needs to be taken
Well,
care
and that's one of the things, and that's where the corporate structure kind of gets away with another like little sly wink, right? Because they convince most of the populace that their elections, their private corporate elections, are actually public elections, and they convert actual Americans who are recognized as nationally Americans into a form of U.S. territorial British citizenship, which is what U.S. citizenship is, and people don't recognize that because, again, these corporations are only liable to recognize American people when it comes to petitioning the government for redress of grievances. So if there's people coming up, but they're waving around a driver license or a birth certificate, which the judge knows and the clerk of the court knows that those things that are being waved around are just trusts and bonds and corporations, they have zero paperwork that says you're anything other than a corporation. So they're
Right.
not obligated to recognize you as an American because you're shoving paperwork in their face that they gave you to identify you, rather than having your properly recorded declarations on the land and soil, going to that recording office, getting certified copies and showing them that you actually have evidence, much more powerful evidence than the birth certificate ever was, more witnesses and a better paper trail that shows that you exist in the flesh and that you are a living man or living woman. And then they have to recognize you as American people. So again, the founding fathers laid it out pretty good, but unfortunately the corporations have steered our understanding of what that means. Generally speaking, people think that the right to assemble and petition the government means going out and holding a sign and holding a protest or going in, like you said, those
And
private
they've red
meetings,
flagged it too,
having your
Hudson.
right and having your 1 minute of saying something before you get kicked out and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Bobby,
Turn your
you're still on
microphone
mute.
on, Bobby.
Might have been the same as before.
You got it?
I don't think it's connected, Bobby.
Well, you work on that, Bobby. We'll ask another question and get back with you. Adam, this one's to you.
1 2 1 2.
There you go. You're in.
Okay. I'm so sorry to bother you guys.
No, go ahead.
All right. So, there's something I definitely want to expand on that. Even if you don't have your paperwork in, okay, it comes down to a title. They cannot talk to any live person. They can't even address you if you're a live person. That's why it's all under presumption. Basically, all you have to do is, there's a trust involved, right? Contract law, property law, trust law. There's a trust involved. So, with the birth certificate, that makes you the beneficiary, okay? Makes them trustee, okay? That makes you trustee and the state beneficiary, okay? So when you go in there and reassign, I am the living person. I am the man, Robert, okay? I am beneficiary and I assign you trustee. Now it's on them, okay? So that's kind of the whole process of this redemption type of thing. But we do have things, even though there's something not available through the states yet. There's 5 core things that you guys all know, and this is the whole reason what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so it's called private attorney general. All right, so what are the 5 things I'm talking about? Okay, and what is a private attorney general? You guys ever heard that term before?
Yeah.
Yes, most states have a gray area when it comes to that. California
Right.
is the only one I know of that actually has gone through with it. There's a few other states that are kind of on the fence, but Ohio is a gray state.
So check this out, though. You know, it could be great all at once, but when it goes, you know, if you bring it to an Article 3 court or something like that, but you got to do it the right way. You have to have a conditional acceptance. You know, any presentment, okay, any presentment is its commercial transaction. All right, so that's where the UCC comes in. Okay, so you got to have your conditional acceptance of whatever they do, right? You got to reserve your rights under their law. So how do you reserve your rights? It's UCC 1-308, 308.4, and then there's something UCC 1-103 and UCC 1-103.6, okay? And 103.6 and 103 basically states, unless you're displaced by the particular provisions of this act, right? The principles of law, equity, law merchant, because this is all law merchant, it's all it is, or supplement its provisions. So the common law survives within the UCC framework. So where does that come from? Including the law merchant supplement its provision, meaning that the law merchant knows this, and this is all based off the law merchant. Okay, so that's another avenue. Look this up. I promise you, it's all legit. I'll even McNeil versus Wisconsin. Okay, you just start there. You know, then you have to have a fee schedule because your time's worth money. Okay, with the fee schedule, right after that happens, that's where you challenge FAR jurisdiction. Every single one of these people, every single one of them, have to be registered with the DOJ FAR unit. And with the DOJ, some type of intel, or I can't remember exactly. There's another unit that they have to be, registered with. But basically, it's FARA, and you can pull. None of them are, you know. And then you have to have an affidavit of truth, because in commerce, you know, that's what happens. Well, witness testimony in the form of affidavit. Excuse me. And there you go. That's the 5-step thing. That's it. It works every time. Every time.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, we got to look into that.
So look up. You know, Hague versus Hague. I can't pronounce it right because my mouth's so dry. Hague versus Agi, right? It's basically the government's authority to regulate persons acting as agents of foreign principles. Has long historical basis, you know. So basically, you know, because of Unidroit, and that's what the UCC's the trademark of the UCC is Unidroit. Who owns Unidroit? Vatican. Foreign law. If you're practicing UCC, you're under foreign law. No, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can't put that. You know, I'll yield there.
All right. We got a kind of a controversial question I'm going to throw on. All right, Hudson. If an unincorporated sheriff can lawfully arrest corporate officers who violate people's rights, what happens to the entire structure of government agencies that operate as corporations?
Well, you start to see what we're starting to see, where you have all of these CEOs of these big corporations being locked up, and obviously the USA Inc. being liquidated and going bankrupt. Obviously, the corporate administration tries to claim credit for all of that, but you really have a situation where, because Anna von Reitz did what she did and claimed the debts, she recognized that anywhere there's a debt, there's a credit, which means that ultimately the people are the beneficiaries. Because that happened, these corporations can't just funnel their debt back off onto Americans as a form of taxation, income taxation. And so it creates a situation where our state assemblies are being set up, which means our state courts are being set up. And because of that, our state militias are also being set up, and we have sheriffs now. And it makes it so that we can actually hold due process and prosecute corporate entities that violate the public law. And so it creates a situation where the presumed corporate veil or corporate protection that has been provided to so many criminals for so long is rapidly collapsing, which is why you have a lot of these CEOs trying to get out and making stupid moves and getting arrested, because they recognize that the public law is back. The law of the land has been declared, and it's literally just a matter of time before we have more and more people correct their status to the point we have enough enforcement to really start cracking down the hammer. And really, again, people are worried about this. Like, wait, what are you doing? Like, you're overthrowing the government, and are you guys like what is the term they call us? I'm thinking insurgents, not insurgents. There's a word I'm forgetting, but basically they think that we're here to overthrow the government. It's like, no. Actually, we're here to enforce the public law only against people that have committed crimes under the corporate veil, whether that be, I don't know, Walmart Inc. or the USA Inc.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what corporation it is. If you committed a crime, you can be prosecuted. And fortunately, because the law of the land has been declared, it makes a situation where if enough Americans correct their status and do what we're doing right now, we actually can look forward to a world of, corporate feudalism going away, where we have American rights and they're honored.
Yeah. Well, hey,
It's
before
here.
we go any further, I have to. Hudson brought it up. The states, the unincorporated assemblies are in session. This is for everybody watching. They're all 50 states are in session. Counties are coming up. We have sheriffs elected on counties. Not all of them yet. But
Ex parte Milligan's been activated.
Ex parte Milligan has been invoked. But the most important thing, as of right now, we took another step the other day, and we have our first commissioned Continental Marshal. His name's Paul Pappas. So we want to congratulate Paul. It's a big step in this country, in our country, restoring its lawful government. And I know he's got several deputies underneath him already. So things are moving along. So we hope them guys, we need them, for the international jurisdiction that can be taking some of these major corporations to the clink if need be, So
Right.
we want to thank them guys for that. All right. So let's get off one more question. Bobby, did you have something to say?
Oh no, I was just gonna continue on my stuff. Go ahead. You're good to go.
All right.
Whatever you got.
This is the last question. We'll throw it your way. If corporate officials can be held personally accountable by a sheriff, how many actions we've been told are legal would suddenly become criminal?
Well, almost everything, because legal is the bastardization of law. Everything they do is unlawful for most part.
Undoing of God's law, right? By definition.
Adam, you got it, man. I mean, that's exactly what it is, and and this is exactly fits in with. So another thing about the private attorney general, all right, it doesn't have to happen to you. You could stick up for any public law and do this. That's where the power of this comes in. It's like, it's not just about you. You could do this for anybody, and so far it's I haven't got remedy, but I've got them off my back. So, and a lot of it has to do with the FAR challenge, I believe. So I'll yield with that. But to answer your question one more time, brother, because
let's get it here.
To say the least.
If corporate officials can be held personally accountable by a sheriff, how many actions we've been told are legal would suddenly become criminal? And you said it.
Absolutely, brother. Almost all of them, 100%.
Adam, you got anything to add on?
Off the top of my head, I think Bobby hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think they'd start taking things a lot more seriously, and they would start getting right with God and, how things are supposed to operate, instead of forcing people into legal proceedings that they don't have lawful authority to do in the first place. And if you actually go scour the dockets all over your counties across the country, you're going to see, well, if you know what to look for, you're going to see procedural errors, due process violations out
Every
the
time.
wazoo.
Every
And,
time.
they move forward without jurisdiction, and people don't know their rights, and they're getting jammed up. People are getting miscategorized into all into one basket. There's all these different groups out here, and then there's the states' assemblies. We're not a general assembly, we're the states' assemblies. You got your county level assemblies, and then you got all these other groups that are doing David Straight nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Secured party creditor stuff can work, it's
It can.
lucrative if you use it the right way. But a lot of people misinterpret what they're doing, and they're learning from the wrong people and not researching on their own, and they get themselves jammed up. Then they come to the assemblies looking for help, and then we got to unjam what they did. And by that time, they're already getting locked up. So,
Yeah.
I
I just want to speak on that too. These the Leos, they you can't not have them. Okay, they are the ultimate defense against pure evil. You think these guys are bad? Wait till you see real evil. We need peacekeepers. We need people to be part of the community, not overtake it. Is what I'm trying to get at. We don't need occupation. We need cooperation, right? So you have to understand, this is the hardest job in the world. The hardest job in the world. Okay. The shit that's fed down their throat, they're taking as gospel because they trust the system until they get screwed. Okay.
Yeah.
They trust the system. I love them to death. You know, there's some really bad apples. I wish I'm gonna just say hanging from a freaking rope. And when I get you, you're gonna be hanging from a rope, and you know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah, I always say it, back to blue until it happens to you.
Oh boy, yeah. Just curl yourself in a hole now, boy. Anyway, I'll get back to normal. So what I want to say is when you're stopped by these people, okay, knowing that they're trained, knowing that they're triggered for this, everything's tactical now, right? I'm not saying get rid of tactical. I'm a SWAT guy, you know, but bring it when you need it, not for a show of force. They don't understand this. You cannot, you know, I get away with it because I used to be the bad guy in the academy. I was the red guy. You know what I mean? I was the one who played the criminal, who, you know, sold the drugs and was driving drunk. And that was one of the best days ever. You drive drunk and have cops chase you. Best thing in the world. So they don't know. They don't know. If they're giving you shit, just take it. Until, you know, if you go hands on, it's a different story. But just listen, man. It's a really, really hard job, and somebody's got to do it. Unfortunately, there's no other path for them. So the guys that know it's fucked up can't leave because, you know, there's nowhere to go. They're not going to stop doing that to go work at McDonald's. I mean, come on.
Bobby's from the original 21 Jump Street.
Hey,
Well, hey, I think that's going to wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm out of there before I get hands up.
Bobby, thanks for coming. Hey, Hudson, you got any? You want to shout out your channel you have on?
yeah, that'd be great. So I have a podcast called The Living Man Podcast. You can find it just by looking up The Living Man Podcast on YouTube. I also have it on Rumble, so you can find me there as well, just in case I get kicked off YouTube for any reason. And I do a lot of stuff on there as far as educational videos for American history and the basics of paperwork and some of the other cool things that I've just come across and learned. I share some of my poems that I've written about it and all this stuff. So anyone that wants to look me up there, go for it.
I got one more thing, man. One more thing. Listen,
all right.
We're not against law enforcement. We're here to make your lives better. Please, just let your guards down.
Yeah, we have to work together.
None of us are going away. We got to work together. It's just going to have to happen.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. Adam, do you have any of these shout outs you would like to give?
Just, you know, get with your state's assemblies, you know, continue if you need places to get education and resources here, you know, watching the podcast. You can go over to America's Forgotten Rights on YouTube. It's basically a repository for these. You know, the Reeves Shop Talk 44 on Rumble. There's a little bit of good information over there. I'll be adding to it in time.
Check out PKTF site. They got a lot of good info there too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Hey, the PKTF does want to let everybody know that they are on Podbean now. They have a podcast on Podbean. So go to the App Store, get a hold of Podbean, and watch the PKTF on there. They got some good stuff going on. And for all you people that need to get papered up, you can go to standup.land. Check that out, or else claimyourinheritance.info. Really good sites to let everybody become an American again.
Yep.
So
you guys got that transition, man. We'll send it out, buddy.
Hey, I just want everybody to remember, it's not just about you. It's about your children, your community, your country. Their system only works if you stay asleep. So wake up, stand up, and most of all, speak up. We're out of here. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Have a good night.
Later, fellas. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Hey, we'll talk to you in a little bit. Everybody have a good night.